And you learn a lot of stuff, in the process, what to do, what not to do, which I later carried on as the CEO of a couple publicly traded companies.
Hi, everybody. Todd Denkin here, and welcome back to Becoming the King of Pot. With me, as always, is the King of Pot, Bruce Perlowin. Bruce, how's it going?
It's going great, Todd. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm excited to talk about the rest of the money, right? Last week we talked about really what you were doing with all the money and how laundering the money was a full-time job, and you created all these businesses, and we're going to continue that conversation. But before we do, if you're watching us for the first time or for the 100th time, thank you for that. Please hit the like and subscribe button, because subscribing to Becoming the King of Pot really helps our mission right here. And you can also check out our website. You can see a link down below, and you could check out Becoming the King of Pot merchandise. We have shirts, we have hats, we have mouse pads, we have stash bags. We even have posters of Bruce and his crew. So check it out. It's BTKOP.com. Check it out. Thanks for that. So, Bruce, we're talking about moving your money around and what to do with all the frickin' money, right? And you started to get into fisheries. Let's talk about how that all started.
Okay, that's a very interesting and somewhat funny story. Okay.
Oh, good.
We have all these fishing boats. Okay. We have all these fishing boats. And so when one of the trips, Craig got the idea, the dock master, to take 30,000 pounds of fish. They bought it up, I don't know where they bought it, somewhere in Seattle or San Francisco, and they put it in a truck, right? Untraceable. And they drove it after the boat was offloaded, just one boat. They brought it down to the dock, and they put 30,000 pounds of fish into the hold of the boat, and then threw a bunch of ice in there. They then took that fish down to Moss Landing. Now, one good thing about that, the fish smell gets rid of the marijuana smell pretty quickly. All right.
Good
so
tip.
That's a good way of doing it.
Good tip. So if your house smells like marijuana, always keep some dead fish around.
Yes. It's funny when we used to do trucks, across the country or, anywhere with marijuana, we would put a dead snake at the very back of the truck. And I don't know why, but somehow the smell of a dead snake to a dog kicks him right off the scent.
That is
another
funny.
Good tip.
How do you learn that? Where does that come from?
It could be urban legend, but there's other smugglers, we all tell each other what works, what doesn't work,
Yeah, it's too bad for the snake, though, but,
Yeah, I know that. I didn't like that. So anyways, so the 30,000 pounds goes down to Moss Landing, which is the home port, to First Cabin General, which was Phil DiGirolamo's and his father's company, or maybe it was his, or maybe it was his father's, I don't know, one of the two. And they sold the fish to them. He gives them a fish ticket, it's called. So you have a reason where that boat had been for the last 2 months. And he gives them a check. In this case, a check for the money. Now, remember, the crews got paid $300,000. So I don't know what 30,000 pounds of fish, let's say it's $1 a pound, $30,000. We would take that off their pay. So now they got paid $30,000. They have legitimate fish ticket, legitimate income. So there's another way of laundering the money for the crew.
Right. But it seems like a real pain in the ass to bring down 30,000 pounds from Washington, right? Or to
it was,
yeah,
it was. But there's times where we ordered. I remember one time we had a new engine. We had a boat, and the engine was no good, and we had to order an entire new engine. Big giant engine for a boat, and it was up in Seattle as well. And they go, well, it's going to take 2 weeks to get here. I go, 2 weeks? Are you out of your mind? Air freight the thing. It was I think back then I remember 4,500 to air freight it, or 6,000. Who cares?
Right.
That boat's going down to get $9 million worth of marijuana.
Yeah.
So they air freighted it. So it was worth it as a front and a disguise to, one, give a reason where the boat was for 2 months because it's a community, everybody knows
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
Where'd that boat go? It disappeared for 2 months. The funny thing is they said, "Well, where did you catch that fish?" I
Ah,
forgot what it
right.
was. They said, and I don't know if this is the right island, they said on the urban banks or some banks out. And why'd they say that? It was, like, due out from or pretty far out from San Francisco because some of the fishermen had gone out there on exploratories years earlier or, that year or the year before, the year before that, and they found out there actually was a good fishery out there. So that was what the story they told them. Well, this is off season, right? I mean, it's off the normal season, there's no fish around.
Yeah.
All the boats beelined it for the urban banks or
Oh, that's
whatever the
funny.
banks
Right,
were out
right.
there, and they all caught fish. So we literally established an entire new fishery from that phony baloney,
Yeah,
story. It was enough just like everything else, there's enough truth in it to make it believable. In this case, not only was it believable, all the, guys who were doing nothing sitting around because the fishery is off season found a new fisheries. So that to this day, it's probably still being fished out there,
wow.
in in the off season. Right. So fisheries was a big deal. Later, what we did after that worked so well, we would just take the boat down to San Francisco to Moss Landing after you take it offshore, clean it all up, get it wash it as good as you could, take it into Moss Landing, and a truck would deliver the fish to Phil and, uh, and we pretended that it came off the boat. It really didn't come off the boat, but the same mechanism, right, giving a fish ticket so they have proof of where they've been for the 30 days, a check so they have proof of income, that's laundering their money so they don't have to deal with all cash.
Right.
At least a portion of it was, a check and traceable and legitimate, at least legitimate to anybody scrutinizing their income. And so that became the standard for us, to deliver the truckload of fish to Moss Landing and pretend it came off the boat.
Oh, that's funny. So you didn't
Um,
even have to do any
so
unload. You just you just parked a fish truck there.
no, exactly.
Right, right.
And I believe, when he would resell the fish, he'd just take it this wouldn't even move it from the out of the truck, you know? Let's say
Right.
because that's what
Why
they did.
bother?
They
Just give
they
the guy the
bought from the
truck,
fishermen.
right? Just get a new truck.
Right. So well, they wouldn't give it's ready to deliver. Right, so they would resell it, all making legitimate income
Yeah,
from this, fishing mechanism.
right.
Now fisheries was a big thing for us, one of the things that I was going to do or I was working on was investing in Phil's father's fishery. Now, I don't know what I was investing in, nor did I care. I just knew that Phil wanted his dad's fishery to take off, and I'd be a partner in it, and okay, sure, just keep getting me boats, okay, and keep getting me crew, and keep doing your part,
Right.
and I'll invest where you wanted to invest in. That was one investment of and laundering money through that fishery in Moss Landing, but more importantly, the fishery down in Costa Rica. Now, to recap what we used to do, we would send our boats from the west coast of California, whether it's Moss Landing or San Francisco, wherever the home port happened to be, where that boat was, down to Punta Arenas in the west coast of Costa Rica and provision it, restock it, make sure everything's ready, and it would wait there until the pot was ready on the west coast of Colombia. Then it would dip down to Colombia, pick up the load, and come back. Well, I had so many boats moving that you couldn't keep going to Punta Arenas over and over and over again. There's what is Cecil doing down there with all these boats? What is Paul Hill doing down here with all these boats? What are all these boats? So we would rotate. One trip would be Punta Arenas. The next which would be the south part of southwest Costa Rica, a place called Golfito. So Punta Arenas, one boat, next boat, Golfito, would be staged there, reprovisioned, refueled, dip down to Colombia. All right. Well, we wanted to, because we had such a big presence there, we're constantly there with all these big, fancy, nice, beautiful
Yeah.
boats, nothing like they've ever seen on the west coast of Costa Rica or Nicaragua or El Salvador. We started setting up fisheries there. So Phil was negotiating with the government to get fishing permits and fishing licenses, as was Cecil. That was another one of his job. And sometimes most of it was with Costa Rica, but when the Taylor Day uh, went into Nicaragua, the Contras or the Sandinistas, whoever was in charge, they were fighting each other, uh, you know, confiscated the boat because they thought it was smuggling arms. And we said, no, we're here to establish a fishery. So they're negotiating with that government to establish a fishery in Nicaragua, and then later a fishery, which is our main port in northwestern Costa Rica. So that was a big deal. We were looking for docks down there. Cecil went up the river, found a perfect spot to establish our fishery, and there was like he said, the shrimp, we had both long line tuna boats and shrimpers. He said the shrimp are so thick there that you could walk on them. It
Oh,
was
wow.
that thick, and it was a very rich fishery, just waiting to make buku bucks. So he found the perfect spot, but the sandbar was there and wouldn't allow our boats had too deep of a draft to get past the sandbar. So, but that was a big ongoing thing, and you could spend cash down there and nobody cared. So that was another way of laundering your money, by buying fisheries. Another thing that we did do is I bought land in northwestern, same thing, near the fishery, because it would give us an excuse for being there, to build a jojoba bean plantation. Now, I'm an environmentalist since a kid, right? I don't like to see nature destroyed, and I like to live in nature.
Unless you have to
So
kill a snake
jojoba,
to throw a dog off. Right.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, and let's talk about that for one second. Do not kill a rattlesnake, and do not kill the Mojave greens out in Arizona, because a rattlesnake has a territory. If you're building your house and you find a rattlesnake, take him and move him 10 miles away. He's not going to come back. He has a territory that he hangs out in. Okay, so it's bad to kill snakes. Anyways, and they eat rodents. All right, so they were killing whales for squalene. All right, squalene comes from a sperm whale, and you have to kill the sperm whale to get the squalene, and it's a real expensive thing in cosmetics. A jojoba bean has the same exact thing, and we say a jojoba bean oil, but it's really a wax, but it turns into oil at a lower temperature. All right, and we bought land, and we planted, I believe, 2,000 jojoba bean trees, babies, little ones, to start this jojoba bean plantation to save the whales. Jojoba bean comes in, you have plenty enough squalene, it's way cheaper than going out and killing whales. They made killing sperm whales illegal anyways later on, but back then we did that. So that was another place that we laundered our money and spent our money, and nobody cared about cash. We had bank accounts and corporations down in Costa Rica, but to walk into a Costa Rica bank and deposit 50,000 or 100,000 did not really make a red flag, because that wasn't really a thing. Marijuana smuggling wasn't a thing. Like in Mexico it was, in Jamaica it was, in Colombia it was, Amsterdam it was, but not in Costa Rica. So they had no
So you were just fish guys.
reference point.
You were fish guys in Costa
Yeah.
Rica.
Or in this case, fish guys mostly, and the jojoba bean plantation, which I forgot the name. There was a corporation that was set up specifically for that, and I'll find it as I go through all my paperwork and files from 40 years ago. And that was a lot of fun because I was saving the environment. Another way, you asked me about laundering money, was, now you see, when you're laundering money, you're not just laundering it for me. I'm laundering it for the fishermen, because some of them are silly enough to go out and buy a brand new Cadillac, which is dumb. Fishermen can't afford a Cadillac on a fisherman's salary. So, you got to help them out a little bit.
Yeah.
Craig laundered his money through my parents' jewelry store. Way back in the beginning, episode 0 or episode 1, we talked about how I lost $30,000 a week's income in Florida at my parents' house, and then I found it, dumped it out on the dining room table. 'Cause I just forgot where I stashed it. And I gave it to my parents for their jewelry store. So Craig would give his money, and so would I, would give them money. They're my parents. Give them whatever they want, right? They raised us. They deserve it. And I had great parents. And and because in jewelry business, see, when you go to shows, people are always paying for jewelry with cash. So that was another mechanism for laundering our money through my parents' jewelry store, mostly utilized by Craig, maybe 10% by me and 90% by Craig, because that's where because they would give him a paycheck. He'd give them cash, pretend it was a cash sale for some jewelry. They would declare it, they would put it on the books, and then they would pay him his salary. So that's how he was making money, through working for the jewelry store.
Yeah, my dad worked there for years, and, like, when I was in high school, my dad worked there. I had no idea you were laundering money in that, jewelry store. Uh, that's funny. I
Neither
got
did your dad.
No, my dad didn't know either. Yeah, I know. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Yeah, right on, 19th Street
Yeah,
in
and that
Lauderhill.
was
Yeah.
yeah,
My dad and I used to
yeah,
go to the
and
flea
that
market.
was
My
not
dad
only what
my dad and I used to go with him to the flea market every Saturday and Sunday, and we'd set up a booth, and we would sell, all kinds of jewelry and, strings of jewelry. We had it on a roller, right? Plus we had, whatever, was for sale in the store.
and was a lot of it cash.
It was all cash. Yeah, it was all cash.
There you go.
Yeah, it was all cash.
So a jewelry store is a great mechanism for laundering money.
Yeah.
And we utilize that as well. So, now we've talked about in the previous episodes, we talked about the Redwood Burl, the Magic Woodsman. We talked about exotic woods. We talked about
The houseboat company?
the houseboat companies laundering money through Las Vegas, hotels that I bought and did timeshare
Yeah.
with, um,
The bank
red
you almost
carpet inns,
bought?
investing in that.
Right.
Yeah. So all this is going on as a backdrop to the main event. The main event is your smuggling operation, buying the boats, getting offload
Right.
spots. It's just one of the divisions that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
Just like another division that we never talk about that much is getting fake ID for everybody. Arthur and Don, two guys that work for me. Arthur went to high school with me. All they did full time, went all over the country getting fake ID for everybody. That was a full-time job. Just one of the many divisions of a smuggling operation that has to be covered, just like counter surveillance. Most smugglers monitored the police to a greater or lesser extent. Some covered every friggin' policeman, Coast Guard, like the guys in Everglades City. They knew where every single, uh, police officer, fish and game guy, Coast Guard, Highway Patrol, they knew where they all were at all times. All right.
Right.
So, and similar to us. So that was another division, just like laundry money, that you have to take care of. It's one of those details. Okay. What else did I do to launder money? Let me look on my list here. The fisheries, set up fisheries in Costa Rica. We covered that.
And how do you
Plantation.
do you have enough money on hand just to go live? Like, do you always have a wad of money in your pocket? And does Craig always have a wad of money in his pocket? Is it, do you have just an unlimited supply of money?
Pretty much, yeah. The rule that I had for every single person who worked for me, other than the people at the Ukiah House. So let's call it 150 people in the smuggling operation, 50 people at the Ukiah House, carry $10,000 cash with you at all times. And the reason was because nobody had insurance. We were kids. We didn't know about insurance, And so if you got in a car wreck or you got in an accident or you got hurt, you could go to the hospital and you had the ability to pay for it.
Right.
So
Right.
I didn't want any of my personnel getting hurt and not being able to take care of themselves at the hospital. So that was the rule, $10,000 cash.
Wow, that's a lot.
And
that's a lot to carry around.
that's like 50 grand today.
Yeah.
But think about a medical emergency. That's what it was for.
Sure.
So, and other emergencies, if you needed to buy something and anybody I knew could go out and buy it. We needed a radio, we needed this, we needed that. So there was these other oddball projects. And like my Uncle Mickey, he always had this thing about gold mines and silver mines down in Mexico. All right. And so I invested money. In this case, it was cash. You didn't have to worry about laundering the money. But if we hit a gold, the silver find that was been a great way to launder money. Well, we found all the silver. And by the way, silver and gold mines are also another good way to launder money. Um, and in this case, I was going after the silver mine. So what it was, there was a story that Mickey heard that in a well that they had down there, that they hid all this gold and silver for somebody from the rebels or from the government or from the conquistadores or whoever. And so, and there's a false bottom on the well, and all you got to go is go down there, jackhammer down the false bottom, and you'll find this treasure trove
Oh, is
of
that all?
silver.
Oh, yeah, just go to the
So
bottom of the well
I
with a
sent text
jackhammer.
down there.
That's all you gotta do? Right?
Yeah. All right, well, the well was dry.
Oh, okay.
Somehow they got the water out of the well.
Right.
Well, and Tex goes down
They
there.
probably did it bucket at a
'cause
time,
he
right?
was in between
Bucket at a
smugglers
time,
or
right?
something.
Was it-
Right. And then when he tells the story, he says, there really was a false bottom there. And we jackhammered through it. And I remember, hearing the story, but, you're smuggling and your boats are running back and forth. That's just something that's going on on the side there.
It's like dinner time
And
conversation.
we got through
Oh,
it.
by the way,
and-
we're jackhammering the bottom of a well, right? Can you pass the potatoes,
Yeah,
please?
exactly.
Right.
So, so then he said, then there was another false bottom there. But then the federales started coming. They got word that the federales were coming. They heard that they were down. The gringos were down there trying to steal their stolen treasure. So he had to hightail it out of there because the federales were coming. And he comes back and he meets Craig. And Craig says, "What did you spend all that money?" It was a lot of money, going down there and getting buying a Jeep to go down there, a 4-wheel drive Jeep, and jackhammers and all this stuff. And he brings back like a sack. And Craig goes, "What is this sack? There's nothing in there." He goes, "No, this is what we're going to put the silver in the sack." So, or maybe there were some stones in the sack that was supposed to be loaded with silver. Who knows? But those are all these peripheral things that you'd hear because you have plenty of money.
Yeah.
To do anything you wanted with. And
did people,
so you're
did-
investing in
right, did people like family and friends and stuff like that, did they always come to you with a investment idea or an investment opportunity?
Oh, always.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a basic rule in life, I think, that if somebody has money and someone has an idea with no money, all these people with their ideas, and some of them are great ideas, but 80% of them are stupid ideas. Not stupid to them, but they could maybe work out. Maybe their ideas, with a twist to it, it could work. They all want the rich person's money, because they deserve it, and they should have it, and I shouldn't, because their idea is better than my idea. I think that's a general undercurrent of economics. Remember, money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. So anyways, I don't know where I got off on that tangent. But anyway, getting back to another money laundering technique.
Yeah.
Back then, there was what we called old bills. They were 19, I believe, I don't know the date, but let's say 1934 and below. All bills, paper bills, not just coins, have a date on them.
Mhm.
And the 1934 and below were a different color. They were a deeper, darker type of green, and it was a different configuration, a little bit different. The look was different. So we called that old money. And the concept was whatever there was old money, and maybe 2%, maybe as much as 3% of your money was old money. And nobody paid attention to that. But we would pull out the old money and we would keep it aside. And the concept was we would say one day that when you got 100,000 or $250,000, that this was given to me by my grandfather or my great-grandfather or my father. And if somebody looked through that cash, like the IRS, they would see the dates are all 1934 and below. So that obviously is a true story, right? Otherwise, you'd have some newer bills in there. So the old money, what we would do, we'd pull them out and we would bury those. They were buried. And you asked me how much I had at the Ukiah house.
Yeah.
So we had the $100,000 to pay the workers up in the closet. Okay. We had the old money. When we got 100,000, we buried it in a PVC pipe across the creek by a tree. All right. And And then Becky had another about 20,000, 50,000 just for spending money for emergencies, separate from the 100,000 to pay the workers, and then the coins. So at the house itself, you had $250,000 of coins, $200,000, 100,000 for the workers, 100,000 buried in of old money, and Becky had about 20. So, you had about $500,000, which is not a lot compared to some other smugglers who got caught with millions of dollars. I never got caught with a lot of money. No, nobody in my organization did, other than the one batch of silver coins, which is half of because they never found the second batch of silver coins.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, but a half a million
so
dollars laying around the house is, most people don't have that. You know,
yeah,
smuggler or
back in
no
those days,
smuggler,
and
I mean, $500,000, that's like two and a
it's 2
half
million
million
today's
dollars. Right,
dollars.
exactly. So, just laying around the house in various spots, buried in a PVC pipe, on the other side of the garden. Right.
It's funny when the FBI raided us and they found the coins, they had heard that there was, money hidden in the walls, and there was. Now I remember, there was another stash up above the closet,
Yeah, in the
and that was
bathroom too,
about
you had the magazine rack that came off the wall and opened up.
right, that magazine rack, but that was a unique thing. What that was, there was a magazine rack and you would open it, and that was to go inside there in case of a raid, close it, and then there was these big bolts that you'd bolt it so nobody could open it from the outside anymore. You were inside, and you had total control of the lights, the cameras, the alarm system, everything you could control in there. You could see everything that was going on while you hid in there and waited for the heat to leave. That was what that was for.
Yeah, that was one of
We
my
didn't have
favorite
money.
parts of the Ukiah house is, the old fake magazine rack.
Yeah, so and that's still there to this day.
Yeah.
Um, and so anyway, so they heard that there was money or silver coins, more silver stashed in the walls. So what they did, they took a scanner, those metal
Yeah.
detectors, and they started looking. And the first place they went to was the master closet in the closet in the master bedroom. Because think about it, if you have money, the average person would probably stash it in the master the
Sure,
master bedroom's closet,
sure.
right? It's near you. You're sleeping by it. You're comfortable. You know you're there. It's there. Well, they did that in the master closet, and they got a hit. There was metal, so they chipped away. They cut the wood away, and it was a bunch of wires because we had wires everywhere in that house. I mean, the security wires, the phone lines, the electric lines, they were, and all the walls were filled with wires because I had this, all the money in the world to
The
design this,
10,000-volt
plate.
wires, to the stairs were
Right,
there.
and for this,
Yeah. And didn't you
yeah,
have
for
didn't you have
those that
thick, steel walls also?
Yeah. For those that don't know about the 10,000 volts, we had a spiral staircase up to the master bedroom that was electrified with this 10,000 volts or 20,000 volts or amps. It wouldn't kill you, but it would knock you down and you're not getting up that stairs no matter what. And we had a steel plate, that's Todd just mentioned, because on one window, we had this wall full of switches, light switches, alarm switches, camera switches. And the theory was that if someone was out there, they could actually shoot through the wall and hit you while you're playing with the switches. So we had a bulletproof window and steel so that if they did shoot, even with a high powered rifle, armor piercing high powered rifle, because we tested the steel was thick enough that it wouldn't go through and hit you or mess up the light switches that were there.
Yeah, and that was really
So
just
um,
preparation. Nobody was really
it
shooting
was
at you ever, were they? Nope.
no, but you never know. You got a newborn baby there, and there's hunters there, and they could be drunk.
Yeah, yeah, I guess. Okay. Right, but nobody's really showing up and,
So
like you see in the movies these days where, you got 50 FBI agents and SWAT guys and helicopters and all of that shit. That never really happened in the Ukiah house because you prevented it all from happening.
yeah, we were nonviolent, although, they were pretty weird when we weren't there. I got arrested when I got arrested in Ukiah for the Florida smuggle, not for the big operation in
Yeah.
California. They arrested me at the Ukiah airport right after we landed our plane.
Right.
So they never and they didn't even pull a gun. They just walked up, said, "Are you Steve Travis?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, we have a warrant for your arrest." Um, and they did search the house, but we were all arrested at the airport.
Right.
Becky was arrested, Papa was arrested, Arthur was arrested,
Right. Right.
you know, Jeremy, 1 years old, he was arrested.
Oh, that's funny. Do they have little baby handcuffs back then? Little no.
You know,
Right.
with Jeremy, you never could tell. You never knew what he would be up to,
Right. Right.
even at 1 years old.
Right. So you have money hidden
So
everywhere. It's buried in the ground. It's at your stash houses. It's at your, it's really everywhere. And did you consider that money just kind of like go money in case and did you have a go bag stashed somewhere in case you have to, you hear your indictment is happening or the FBI guys, in your rearview mirror? And did you have a plan to get the fuck out?
that's interesting. That's a good question because, again, I'm an archetype of the marijuana smugglers, the kingpins. We're all the guys that were convicted of the kingpin statute, or the OGs, or the counterculture founding fathers of marijuana is what
Right.
we're
I like that
now
name.
being
Yeah.
called. Yeah, I do too. See, it used to be the counterculture hippie founding fathers of marijuana, but a lot of them weren't hippies.
Right.
The hippies, let's be real clear what happened in the historical epic of the golden era of marijuana smuggling, 1960 to 1990. I It started off with the hippies, but it started off really, really small, going down to Jamaica, putting a pound in a statue, all right, or going to Mexico and driving 100 pounds across the border. Or then it just all of a sudden there's some boats going down, but there's like 300, 600-pound loads, little sailboats. Right? It didn't really get big, with the hippies. But a lot of hippies did get big. I'm a hippie. I'm one of the hippies that did get big. But then all of a sudden the rednecks came in. Now they weren't hippies, so you can't call it. But they were the counterculture founding fathers of marijuana. They made up of hippies, surfers, rednecks, Vietnam vets. Who else? You know, uh, um, you know, guys like what would you call the guys in the Everglades? Sort of rednecks, but not really.
Hillbillies.
You know, yeah, there you go, hillbillies. So that was the groups that um, started the marijuana movement in America, making it what it is today. And if you look at what it is today, it's the sixth largest cash crop in America. It's multi-billion, if not at least multi-billion-dollar industry. It's
Definitely.
legal in 27 states. How big is the industry today that we started?
Yeah.
You know,
Ginormous. They do $1
and
billion a year just in Nevada. So,
yeah, in one state,
yeah.
and in Florida it's bigger. But you think about it, marijuana would not have been as prevalent as it is today. And by the way, in 2024, it bypassed alcohol, and more people smoke marijuana than drink alcohol. Right? And so it would not have been inculcated into society the way it is today if it wasn't for the cultural creative, no, not the cultural creatives, the counterculture founding fathers of marijuana, made up of those 5
Yeah.
groups: the hippies, the rednecks, the hillbillies,
Yeah.
the Vietnam vets, and the surfers.
So, Bruce, what was the most fun or best thing that you bought with all this money, and what was the worst thing you lost?
Okay, that's a good question. The best thing I bought was really 2 things. One was the airplane for Becky, and
Yeah.
as I described earlier, we took her down to the airport, and it was for her birthday, and there was this P210, Cessna P210 single-engine, 6-seated plane with a ribbon around it, and she goes, "Why is there a ribbon on that plane?" And then she looked at the number on the tail, and it was BL210, Becky Lynn 210. And then she realized what she got. She goes, "Oh my god." She was, like, thrilled. So she got her own airplane. That was the best thing I bought. The other second thing I best bought was a beautiful, um, amethyst geode, a real big you've seen those geodes, right? They cut them, and that was in the
No,
front.
what's an amethyst geode? Well, I don't even know what that is.
Amethyst geode, if anyone's ever seen an amethyst is a purple stone, a beautiful purple stone, and let's imagine a rock like that, and then cut
Oh, I
the
see.
rock in half, and you'll see all these little purple
Mm.
stones in there, and that's called a geode. But they get like really big. I mean, some of them are 20 feet tall, some are 10 feet tall. This one was about 4 feet tall, and we mounted it on a pedestal at the front entranceway to the Ukiah house. I don't know if you remember that, Todd. Do you remember that
I
big
don't.
geode? Okay.
No, I
It
don't.
may not have
Yeah.
been there when you were there, but that was the other thing, and the reason that those are the best things I bought because they were for Becky. They were for somebody I loved and cared about, you
Mhm.
know, and, uh, and she still has a Geo to this day, so that's
Oh,
good
really?
news. Yeah,
Really? Yeah.
yeah. So and,
And
that
and
makes me
what's the
happy.
what's the biggest loss, of all those, hundreds of millions of dollars that ran through your organization? What was the biggest hard hit loss, the soul crushing loss?
Well, there's 2 kinds of loss. One was the camaraderie of a network, a family. So that's personal, emotional,
Mhm.
human losses. Then there's the physical things. And I think you're talking about the physical things. Probably the thing I lost the most was the house.
Hmm.
You spend $3 million, $1980 building a house to your specifications, your design. That's you. That wood is from your heart. That's what you like, and that's what Becky liked. And the gardens and all that, the roses, the tiered terraces, the 20,000 little pine trees that we planted on the hillside. That was probably the biggest loss. Although I had an opportunity to buy it back recently, as
Yeah.
an adult, like a couple of years ago, and 1, I
You
couldn't
weren't an
afford it.
adult back then? You weren't an
No, I
adult
was a
back then?
kid back then. We were a bunch of kids just playing,
Got it.
cops and robbers. So,
Got it.
uh, but 1, I couldn't afford it. 2 is, I'm not smuggling anymore. 2
Right.
is, what do I need a house 4 miles down a dirt road that's gonna cost, $5,000 a month minimum to maintain it and to fix it up, you know, I'm not a
Yeah.
fugitive anymore. I don't need a house 4
Yeah.
miles down the road, near my
Right.
dock, 90 miles away from my dock where I'm, doing all my business. So it just didn't fit into my lifestyle, but that was probably the nearest and dearest thing that I lost on a physical possession.
Right, and what about during the operation? Not after you were busted, but what was the biggest, loss, hit to the company, during those times? Was it a $1,000,000 loss? Was it a I mean, what happened and had you recover?
The biggest loss was Billy Bong. Was it Billy Bong? No, Corky Bill getting busted with
Mm,
32,000 pounds of high-grade Punta Rojo on his boat. So we lost the 32,000 pounds, we lost the boat, we lost the legal fees, and we, just lost, the momentum. That was the one and
yeah,
only bust that ever happened on the West Coast, so that was a big loss. 9,000,000, $10,000,000 in product,
yeah,
probably more because that
that's
was high
huge.
grade, it would've been 3 and a quarter, so 3 and a quarter times 32,000.
Yeah, crazy.
So,
Alright, any other thing you wanna wrap up
what is
with,
what
moving the money around and, the things you did with the money that were fun?
No, it's just that, you had the ability to literally buy anything you want, anything from and I like the business stuff, the trucks, the speedboats, the always, the more docks, more boats, more Zodiacs, more radio equipment, more scanners, more RVs, with electronics in them. That's what I like to spend the money on is building the company. Um,
Yeah,
and you had as much money to do whatever you wanted to your heart's content. Uh, and you learn a lot of stuff, in the process, what to do, what not to do, which I later carried on as the CEO of a couple publicly traded companies. But
right.
that's a different story.
Yeah. So the money, what the money does is it gives you freedom, right? The freedom to do whatever it is you want to freaking do, and the freedom to go buy what you want to buy and live the life that you want to live. And that's, in those years, did you think to yourself, as you had all these millions of dollars, did you think, it all worked? Or were you just still, I want to change the world, where I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this? Was there ever a point of, ah, you know what I mean?
Sort of, yes and no. One, you do get to a point where this is going great, you know? I've arrived, I'm top of my game, everything's going smooth. I
Yeah,
Second thing is, I really do wanna keep focus and your mind shifts from changing the world and raising the consciousness to the job at hand, which is smuggling marijuana and
yeah,
doing everything from laundering the money to doing the fishes and all those other business I discussed. Uh, but the urge to get back to changing the world somehow to make a better place, for this planet was always an undercurrent, and it became more of uh, a top priority as time went on and as I got older.
yeah,
So, it's both. You've arrived, you've succeeded, this is great, and,
right,
this is not what I was meant to do. It was part of what I was
right,
meant to do, but not
yeah,
the big part of what I was meant to do.
yeah. So it seems that moving that money around was quite an operation. That was a lot of fun talking about all that darn money. And when you were busted, what were you caught with? I think you had like 10 million or 16 million or something. What did they take from you?
Well, they took $16 million in bank accounts, the Luxembourg Trust, the Liechtenstein, the Panama corporations, the Bahama corporations, the Costa Rican, bank accounts. So, because the guy who was putting it there for me, Charlie Bruin and Jack Dubard, they rolled over and told him where all the bank accounts were. So there goes $16 million in that one fell swoop. And then, the dock, the boats, the plane, the house, all that,
Yeah,
all that. There's a few bank accounts they found, um, with money in them. I don't know remember how much, domestic accounts, because
yeah,
I did have a lot of corporations and they got them all,
yeah.
so
Everyone always asks me when I talk about this show and I talk about you, they always say, "Well, he must have had some money hidden somewhere. Did he have any money when he got out of prison?"
yes. The $100,000 that was buried somewhere, that went to Becky and my son,
Mhm.
okay, 'cause that is what a good father and ex-husband should do,
Yeah.
and I found one bank account with $5,000 in it. That was it.
Oh, that's hilarious. That was it. Wow, all those hundreds of millions of dollars, and you end up with $5,000 9 years later, right?
I made it again, legally.
Yeah, no, I know that, but, that's awesome. Well, another great episode, Bruce. Thanks for sharing as always, and, folks, if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe and like our show. It really helps us here at Becoming the King of Pot. And, Bruce, next week, we'll talk about more. Oh, there's the, posters that you want to, that are also on our, website. So, we have a whole series of King of Pot posters. Check them out at the website at becomingtkop.com. I'm Todd Denkin. He's Bruce Perlowin, the King of Pots, and you've been watching Becoming the King of Pot. We'll see you next time.